Hey there, football fanatics. Let's talk about the madness that is the College Football Playoff, CFP, rankings. Because apparently, someone on the committee must have been sleeping through the season. Buckle up, grab your favorite snacks, and let's dive into why the inclusion of Indiana in the playoff picture is about as logical as using a plastic fork to eat soup. It's time for some serious analysis and plenty of jokes, because why not? Indiana's shameless CFP campaign. Are we kidding? Alright, let's set the scene. It's a cold December night. You're sitting by the fire, cozy and warm, just trying to enjoy some football. And then, out of nowhere, a bombshell drops. The college football playoff rankings come out. And there they are. Indiana is in the conversation. Yes, Indiana, the team with the easiest schedule in all of college football, is somehow in the playoff discussion. Now, before you grab your pitchforks and torches, hear me out. I'm all for underdogs, but Indiana in the CFP? Come on, they've had a nice season. No doubt, but let's get real for a second. This team has no wins against ranked teams. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Nada. Yet, here they are, potentially locking up a playoff spot, while other teams with legitimate wins are sitting at home wondering what went wrong. The data points dilemma. What are we doing here? Let's talk about data points. Ward Manuel, the CFP Selection Committee chairman, made an infamous statement during championship week. According to Manuel, teams that aren't playing this week, like Ole Miss, for example, will get no adjustments to their rankings. His reasoning? They don't have another data point. Obviously. Excuse me? No data points? So, when Georgia beats Texas in the SEC championship and Ole Miss beats the ever-living daylights out of whoever dares to challenge them, that doesn't count as data, I guess. In Manuel's world, beating the number 2 team in the country and dominating the SEC doesn't deserve a second glance. But Indiana, with all of one loss, somehow gets in? Let's face it, if this is the logic we're going with, the CFP needs a total overhaul. Don't get me wrong, I love an upset as much as the next guy. But come on, this is madness. The Hoosiers. How did we get here? Here's the thing about Indiana. They've put up a solid record. But let's be honest, they've been playing in a conference that's easier to navigate than a shopping mall on a Tuesday morning. Their one and only loss came against Ohio State by 23 points. I'm not a math genius, but that sounds pretty rough to me. They've faced a schedule full of teams with 5 or more losses, which isn't exactly a murder's row, but somehow, they're being treated like a legitimate playoff contender. If we're rewarding teams for beating up on inferior competition, then why not throw Army into the playoff mix? They're cruising through the American Athletic Conference, with an average win margin of 17 points per game. Sure, their only loss was a blowout to Notre Dame. But hey, that's better than some teams in the CFP conversation, right? But, of course, Army doesn't play in a prestigious conference like the Big Ten. So, I guess they're not good enough to be in the playoff mix, even though their resume is way stronger than Indiana's. Ole Miss versus Indiana, the real story. Let's talk about Ole Miss for a second. They've been flying under the radar all season. But when you look at their resume, it's hard to ignore. They've beaten top-tier teams, including an 18-point win over the SEC champion, Georgia. Not only that, but they've got a win over the number 2 team and a 24-point win at number 14 South Carolina. And what do they get for all that? A seat at the kids' table. Apparently. Meanwhile, Indiana is sitting pretty in the playoff conversation, even though they've been cruising through a relatively easy schedule. If we're really going to say that Indiana has earned their spot based on an easy road to 11 wins, we're doing college football a massive disservice. The unfair advantage. The Big Ten versus the SEC. This isn't about Indiana being a bad team. They've had a nice run. But let's not kid ourselves. The Big Ten is not the SEC. The SEC is home to perennial powerhouse teams like Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, who are in a constant battle for the top spots every year. Meanwhile, Indiana has been playing in a Big Ten conference where it's a little easier to make it to the top of the heap. Let's not even get started on the whole Ohio State thing. Ohio State is a monster in the Big Ten. If you're Indiana, you're kind of hoping the Buckeyes trip up at some point. But that rarely happens. And when Ohio State is rolling, teams like Indiana have no choice but to watch from the sidelines. So, Again, this isn't about Indiana being bad. It's about the fact that they've benefited from playing in a conference that didn't have as many elite teams. And that shouldn't automatically get you a ticket to the playoff. Let's talk about the real problem. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why all the hate on Indiana? The truth is, I'm not mad at the Hoosiers. I'm mad at the system. The college football playoff is supposed to be about the best teams in the country, not the teams who had the easiest ride to an 11-1 record. It's time to stop rewarding teams for having easy schedules and start rewarding teams that play against elite competition. This isn't about Indiana's accomplishments. It's about the fact that their accomplishments have come against teams that weren't exactly fighting for national championships. The bigger issue here is that the playoff system is starting to reward mediocrity. If we're rewarding teams for simply not losing much, without looking at who they've played or how difficult their schedule was, we're completely missing the point of what college football is all about. The CFP. Time for a change? If the committee can't look at the resumes of teams like Ole Miss and realize that they've played against far better competition than Indiana, then we're in serious trouble. The 12-team playoff should be about crowning the best teams, not the teams who lucked out with an easier schedule. Indiana, in this case, doesn't deserve to be in the mix. And if they do get in, it's a slap in the face to teams that have actually earned their spots. Well, that's it for today's rant. Folks, if you've been as baffled as I have by this playoff nonsense, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with your fellow football fans. The CFP needs a major overhaul. And the more we talk about it, the more likely change will happen. Until next time, folks, keep your eyes on the field and your brains in the game. Let's hope for a playoff that actually rewards the best teams and doesn't fall into this pit of mediocrity. See you next time. Hey, football fans, buckle up, because we're diving deep into the wild, crazy, and occasionally bewildering world of the college football playoff rankings. Trust me, this year's race is more exciting than watching your team fumble a perfect pass, only for a magical recovery to land them in the playoff. Yep. We're talking about the Zombie Tide and their unexpected comeback, as well as Miami's case for the last playoff spot. So, grab your favorite snack, kick back, and let's break it down. Alabama's resurrection, from Zombie Tide to playoff contender. So, Alabama's season looked about as dead as a doornail a few weeks ago. Right? 3 losses, including 2 facepalm-worthy defeats to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And the real Alabama fans were mourning like it was the end of an era. But wait, is that a pulse? That's right, folks, the Crimson Tide are back from the dead, and they've crawled up to number 11 in the college football playoff rankings, overtaking Miami. If you're not familiar with the term Zombie Tide, it's the phenomenon when a seemingly lifeless team resurrects and gets a second chance. All thanks to the chaos of the college football playoff committee. Can we get a round of applause for dramatic plot twists? But hey, this isn't just some fluke. Alabama's strength of schedule has been absolutely ridiculous this season, with victories over teams like number 5 Georgia, number 14 South Carolina, and number 19 Missouri. Alabama's ability to hang with the big dogs has kept them in the conversation. They're the team no one wants to face. And even though they've had some truly cringeworthy losses, including the 24-3 disaster against Oklahoma, who finished the season 6-6, yes, that happened, their overall performance against top-tier competition helped them jump Miami in the rankings. Miami's case, so close, yet so far. On the other side of the equation, we've got Miami, 10-2, a respectable record, and an offense that's about as potent as a quarterback throwing on a full moon. But their defense? Well, that's been as suspect as a referee's call in the last 10 seconds of a tied game. Miami's defense has allowed them to let up big leads, and they even blew a 21-point first-half advantage to Syracuse in Week 14. That loss was the ultimate oops moment, and it raised serious questions about their ability to close out games. Sure, the Hurricanes have had some exciting wins, most notably, their offense, led by star quarterback Cam Ward, has kept Miami in the hunt. But here's the kicker. Miami has 0 wins against ranked teams this season. Nada. Zilch. Zip. Their best win? Maybe over a 7-5 Virginia Tech squad? That's not quite the signature win you'd expect from a playoff contender. This lack of truly significant victories combined with a meh defense, is probably why the committee gave Alabama the nod over Miami. Despite the Crimson Tide's 3 losses, the committee looked at the whole picture, how teams fared against top-ranked opponents and who they managed to beat. Alabama, despite its flubs, came out looking stronger in that department.